He literally said, I think we're invading Venezuela because of gay marriage.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that they legalize gay marriage.
I'm not right-wing enough for this.
I love the idea of taking Greenland because I want Greenland. That sounds awesome. But like, I understand the vibe.
Was that sarcasm?
No, I don't like the idea of... Oh my gosh!
Every week, we are in a new location.
But if the content sucks, it sucks anyway. Good afternoon!
Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon.
Welcome to episode 15
of Approach the Bench.
This is a very special episode with a very special guest. We're really pumped for it. But before we jump into anything else, let me give you an idea of the main topics we're discussing this episode. There's a lot going on in the world, so we want to do an episode that focuses on a little bit of foreign policy and whether or not America should be involved in Venezuela and Iran and all these other things in the world. After that, we're going to talk about the 2028 general elections, who's going to be the nominees for president, and then we'll finish with
girl problems.
Are you excited for this, Larissa?
I am completely excited. I am the most nervous about girl problems, I'll say, but we'll get to it.
That's so funny. Of all the things, you'd think that the most controversial would be the politics.
Totally.
But I guess our takes on...
You said girl problems and politics are not related, so...
Oh, fair, totally.
That is actually so true. We've done a whole episode on the girl problems aspects of politics. Because, men and women disagree on so many political issues.
And they're dividing more and more.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But before we get into it, we want to give an introduction of you. So Larissa, for those of you who don't know, one, she's a Harvard law lawyer as well. Right now.
Soon to be.
Soon to be. Eventually.
Yeah.
Well, I like to claim the title of lawyer. I'm not either yet. We're all just students. But we're going to be expectant if we can pass the bar. And then you're a 1L?
I'm a 1L right now. Yeah, I was part of the junior deferral program, so I got in back in 2020.
Same, actually.
No way.
But I got in 2019. Yeah.
So yeah, I took 4 years off. It's been
Me
a long
too.
time coming.
Wow.
What?
That's amazing.
I did a lot of international work during that time.
Me too.
What? Where?
Yeah, I was in the Army in Germany, so a little different international
I was in Germany
work.
and Nuremberg for a little bit.
I was really close to Nuremberg,
Wow.
like an hour away.
That's crazy. The things
amazing.
you learn.
That's so cool. Okay.
That is really
Sorry
funny.
to
That's what I'm
derail.
saying. Look at these little things that we find happen
amazing.
on the podcast. But one, she's a 1L, but also she is much better known than either of us sitting on this bench. So we're very happy to have her.
Famous.
She's got a massive Instagram account. I refer to as massive because I think it is actually incredible how often you come up in my reels and in others' reels.
Me, honestly though, like I don't know. I feel like I have ops watching me all the time.
No, not ops. I find it interesting. I think your takes are really balanced. This is the thing. Larissa is honestly, like, as much as you're going to find, we have different political opinions. All of us do, even on this bench. I have disagreements with Will all the time. But amongst that, the most important thing to me with politics, and I think Will would agree with this, is reasonability.
Totally. And I'm a huge cross-aisle kind of guy, you know? I long for that.
Absolutely.
To
So,
come back in America.
as part of that, Larissa, could you explain just for a moment, like, why you would be okay with coming on the podcast, talking with the crazies that we are, and what kind of brought you here?
Yeah. So I mean, I'm here a bit inadvertently, I would say. I accidentally walked into a FedSoc event, and I'm assuming you guys all know what FedSoc is, but like, I don't know, those on the left don't. We just see it as this like scary little organization. Like I literally had people, I can't say this.
Yeah, you can.
I literally had people like texting me and they were like I'm scared to walk in there. Like I don't
Wow,
know,
really?
Like, genuinely scared. Like actual genuine.
Oh, that's really
fear.
sad. That's really sad.
But anyway.
Sometimes I am scared as well. For sure. I was scared last year. A couple other people were
My
pretty
biggest
scared.
advice for FedSoc, not biggest, but one of my advice is you guys need to learn how to name your events better, because let me know why they had an event on Obergefell, which if you don't know is like the case on gay rights. And I go in as a progressive thinking.
Can you explain what FedSoc is, though? So I don't.
Oh, what FedSoc is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why is she explaining what FedSoc is?
Well, okay, now I know that because you told me yesterday. Yeah. Actually, this is funny. After our conversation yesterday, I was having lunch with some friends who are also progressive, and we were talking about FedSoc, and we were talking about how one of the Supreme Court justices was in it.
Several Supreme Court justices are part of FedSoc or show up at FedSoc events.
Who was in Harvard Defenders and who was super progressive.
So it's either Gorsuch
Probably
or...
Gorsuch.
Is it Gorsuch?
Probably Gorsuch.
So this conversation came up, and we were like, how was Gorsuch, who was in Harvard Defenders, which if you don't know, like Harvard Law, Harvard Defenders is one of the most progressive organizations on campus, where they are doing public defense work. And Gorsuch was in Harvard Defenders, but also in FedSoc. And
Probably before Harvard Defenders was completely abolitionist, don't you think?
They used to not be.
I believe probably when he was in there, we're not. Yeah.
Well, those are kind of like the two extremes, if
Yeah,
I'm being
they are.
honest, at the Harvard Law campus. And so we were talking about this, and I was like, I actually learned today that FedSoc is supposed to be legally conservative, as in like textualism, the way you're actually analyzing the law as opposed to politically conservative, which I only learned after talking with you, because on the left on this campus, I feel like we just are, it's so divided that we sort of just automatically view FedSoc as this like really scary political organization full of all these MAGA people that have extreme crazy views. And we don't even ask like what the organization is.
Yeah,
so,
that's a good lesson to learn.
I learned this yesterday from you.
I mean, I think
I truly did.
It aspires to be all about the text and legally conservative, but it tends to also be the one kind of like safe space for conservatives on campus, and so it attracts a lot of like, you know, more really hardcore conservatives on the political spectrum, even though it's not that way. But it is a big tent. Both Mason and I believe it should be a big tent.
Well, fundamentally, like the organization was founded not necessarily as a politically conservative org, but rather that it was going to forward a view of the law that often was ascribed to political conservatives, right? And so that allowed for judges and other people who are actually practicing the law or adjudicating the law to participate in the organization, because they can't be in explicitly partisan organizations. But obviously, like these views tend to be associated with conservatives, so the entire group is conservative. That's why when now things are starting to change in terms of what conservatives view on the law, there's a lot of tension, because it's like, well, what makes FedSoc? But we can talk about that separately. That's very interesting.
Is it legal? Is it political?
Exactly.
Like,
Totally.
I mean, I feel like you guys are kind of going through a little self-identity crisis. But
Absolutely.
Totally. I think everybody is these days, frankly.
That's
true. So how did you come about this? The rest of the story. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
So you guys are just bad at naming events, if I'm being honest. So I walk into this event thinking it is pro-gay marriage, pro-gay rights. But then I see Chick-fil-A and I'm like, I don't know if these two like go hand in hand.
That's so funny.
But I will say, the only time that I had Chick-fil-A for lunch was at that FedSoc event.
Nice. It's a staple.
So I walk in, I'm like, do I stay? Do I not? You guys have chicken. All the leftist events are feeding me vegan food. I don't have my protein like for the day. It's really bad. That's one of the worst things about going to these progressive events.
Yeah.
But so I walk in, go to this event. I will say some very crazy things were said. I remember taking notes. There was one guy and he was like, I don't know if I could say this, but he was like, the one thing that connects everyone in their lineage is death and rape. Like, we've all been through this. I was
wow,
like,
that's a crazy thing to say.
That is a very crazy thing to say. And he went to BC.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
amazing.
I know. So,
Wow.
we love the BC representation.
That's crazy.
Anyway, besides that, I sit there, I listen. It was actually really interesting. We were talking about this yesterday to hear. I never get to hear, as a progressive, the legal arguments from the other side, because so many of our professors simply give the liberal assumed skew. And at the end of the day, how on earth am I supposed to, as a lawyer, like when I do become a lawyer, argue in the best way possible and like fight your legal arguments if I don't even know what they are? And so I thought it was really interesting to sit there and hear about the, like, well, we can't go through the judicial route because then we'll just have more destination weddings because we have to recognize marriage certificates like in every state. And instead we should go the legislative route. So I thought that was interesting. But anyway, later that night, I'm doing laundry, and Ripkin, well, I don't know if I can shout him out, but...
No, you totally can.
Okay.
Yeah, you totally can.
Yeah. Ripkin is like, we're just doing laundry, and he's like, oh, I saw you at the event today. And I was like, yeah, that was my accident. Like, that was not somewhere I was supposed to be in. But we ended up talking for like 1 or 2 hours. Like my whole laundry cycle like went through. And Ripken is a conservative Christian guy. I didn't realize this because I think progressives on the left, we were very much like, this is my identity. Like, this is what I represent. But he didn't mention that. And so I didn't really know where he stood on things. And we ended up just having conversations about social justice topics that we actually aligned on. And it wasn't until after we had these conversations that we were like, wait, we came to the same view. We just have a little bit of a different way of getting to that outcome. We're actually a lot more similar than we think. And so it made me realize, like, I never would have become like friends with someone if I wasn't accidentally in a space with that person that I wasn't supposed to be in and never intended to be in. And that when you do look across the aisle, you have a lot more similarities with that person than you think you do, especially when it comes to values. It's just the way that you get to that value that I think is different.
I love that. Yeah, that's a good microcosm for what we're doing on this podcast right now. You're becoming friends with us. Maybe we'll land on some similar, I think outcome.
That's the goal. The goal is to try to have some common ground. Also to talk about differences, because honestly, this this is kind of the next point that I want to make. Like, it'd be helpful too, before we get into any of the other background, anything else here, in terms of like your political definition of yourself, would you say like you're okay being called like a leftist, a Marxist? Would you use that definition for yourself?
So I would not say that I am Marxist. I would say that I am leaning more towards social democrat. And like when we talk on the left, we talk a lot about like you have the liberals. I'm not a liberal. I don't consider myself a liberal. We then have like the social democrats. That's more when you think liberals, you think of like Harris, Biden, Obama, like your typical like establishment Dems. Okay. Then you get to more of the social democrats. That's like AOC, Bernie, Zoran. That's where I place myself. Okay. And then you have the revolutionaries. They never get into office, but they are the ones who are like, we need to overthrow every system possible. We need to abolish everything. I'm not that far left.
Like, what proportion of the Democrat Party do you think each of those groups kind of falls in? What does it feel like, at least?
So Democrats are not revolutionaries. I actually voted third party in the most recent presidential election. And so a lot of social Democrats, if I had to give a percentage, like, it depends on if you're looking in cities. Like we saw just like Zoran won. Like that's the majority of Democrats who are leaning more towards social democracy, which I think is so cool. But I think in like the larger Democratic Party, it's probably still like 75% establishment Dem, 25% maybe like social progressive like Dems.
Yeah, and by like revolutionaries too, do you mean like people who are kind of like, we need to pick up arms, overthrow the system?
Yeah, like this is major horseshoe theory. Like I am very pro gun control, but I actually get a lot of criticism from people on the left who say you should actually be very pro gun. Because in order to overthrow this like racist capitalist system, we are going to need to pick up arms and defend ourselves.
That's interesting.
And I'm not like that. I'm a peace activist. And so I don't go that far left, but I think we do see a lot of similarities between those who are like super far left and those who are also super far right, like January 6ers.
Interesting.
That's really intriguing.
I think we could pivot from here maybe. You talked a lot about your values. And one of the questions that I had, we both went to Boston College. I graduated in 2020 and you graduated in 2021.
Yeah.
And something I was curious about, you mentioned to Mason that you grew up Catholic. And BC is a place that I feel like does a really good job integrating faith and justice and vocation. And so
it's a Jesuit school, right?
Yeah, it's a Jesuit school. And even I felt like that they did a really good job of that there. So I was curious how you see your faith interacting with some of these values and like if that is kind of at the root of where you get your moral compass.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I am a Roman Catholic rebeller. I dropped out in
We
fourth
appreciate
grade.
that a lot. We're all Roman Catholic rebellers.
We are too, yes,
yeah,
we're Protestants.
For sure.
I don't really know the difference. I just know we have a pope.
That's true, and that's our biggest problem. That's our biggest problem. Amen.
So we're with you on that one.
Anti-authoritarian.
Well, I feel like it's also helpful to know like my own background and where I come from to know why I was Roman Catholic in the first place. 3 of my grandparents came from Sicily. So, I mean, Italy, very Roman Catholic country. And so I feel like being Roman Catholic wasn't so much of like a choice, but it was just more so like that was part of the Italian culture, if anything. And so we were very much just religious and going to church because that was what you were told you were supposed to do. It wasn't something that I ever felt connected to. It wasn't something that I feel like my family ever felt connected to. It was more so an obligation. And I truly think when you put obligations on anyone, they're never going to fully believe it and take it in. Like it has to be a choice for you to like really believe in something, in my own opinion. And so I rebelled in like 4th grade. I was like, I'm not doing this. I stopped going to CCD, stopped going to like church and everything. And eventually, I didn't have too many resources in terms of like college admissions. And so BC was like the best school that I got into, but I really didn't want to go because they were Jesuit. I was like, I don't want to be taught religion anymore. It almost felt like religion was like constantly being imposed on me in my life in so many ways. And this is a little bit libertarian of me, but I don't like that. I don't like the imposition of government, of religion, of any institution like on top of me, like kind of shaping my path. And so when I went to BC, my first thing was I want to transfer. I don't want to be here. And so this is so self-interested of me, but we have this class called Pulse where it's you get through your religion and your philosophy requirements, and you also do a volunteering component with it, and they only take like 1 freshman per like section or something to put into that. And so my thinking was, oh, I want to transfer. Volunteering would look real good on my resume. Let me get into that class so I have a volunteering component so that I could transfer.
Nice. Yeah.
Horrible of me, but like also a little bit strategic.
Smart. Hey, no, yeah. Church would say that makes you a good businesswoman.
Yeah.
All right, that makes you smart.
But I mean, that being said, I took that class. I was an econ major at the time. I did econ and psych. Thought I wanted to do like behavioral economics. Added like a finance minor, which is just so insane if you know me now. And I got rejected from all the schools I applied to. And so I kind of like sat there and I was thinking like, why am I not succeeding? And I know I'm very capable. And it was a big part, one of the biggest parts of BC was self-reflection. And so it was a big self-reflective like moment for me to think like what actually made me happy and what drove me during that time. And it was the Pulse class and the emphasis on social justice. And I never, growing up, my family was, let's just say, dysfunctional, and had a lot of like divorce lawyers around me. And so I never saw the law in a positive way. It was always something negative for me. And so it wasn't until I took that class and realized, wait, you can actually be a lawyer and use it for good. Like you can use the law not only to like oppress and to abuse, but also to like uplift people. And so I became a sociology major. I was like, I'm gonna go to law school, all of this. But that being said, I think the only reason why I was able to even have that self-reflection was because of BC spirituality. And even though I'm not Roman Catholic myself and I don't identify like with a religion at all, for me as a progressive, I still consider myself a spiritual person, even if I'm not like aiming that in like a book or like to God or anything. I'm still like self-reflective and spiritual, and that's my own form of faith, I would say.
Do you feel like, is there a specific part of Catholicism or Christianity that you bucked against? And that, because you're still holding on to some of the values that Mason and I share, that we would say comes from our grounding in the Bible and in Jesus' teaching. So is there like a specific, if you're comfortable sharing, like part of that you bucked against, or was it just kind of like the imposition of it on you that you felt really kind of uncomfortable with?
It was more so the imposition.
Okay.
Like I truly think that like if something connects with you, then go forward with it. But it was just the fact that this was not a choice for me that really sat wrong with me, and it wasn't something that I ever connected with. And I think that that's also part of like being like Roman Catholic though, because so much of it is obligation. I think my main issues that I saw was like, one, the connections between the church and capitalism. I really always disliked the part where you pass around the basket.
Okay.
You know, and you put in money, and you could always tell that people around you were looking at how much money you were putting in, and like there was almost this like judgment of like, oh, I can't not put money in, or oh, I only put in a 5 and the person next to me put in like a 50, and at the end of the day, I'm like, where is that money even going? Where, like, how is that money even being spent? And my mom is very conservative and also Roman Catholic. She does her 7:30 church every morning on Sundays, and we talked about this a lot, and she also admitted that she felt very uncomfortable with this. And she's conservative and can also realize the problems between the Roman Catholic Church and capitalism. And so instead of her donating money to the church, we actually set up a fund. I used to do legal advocacy in Kenya and had a few colleagues there, and they're also very Christian. I don't know what type of Christian. That's your guys' realm. But one
they're
of
doing
my
good work, they're probably Protestant. You know?
True.
One of my colleagues in Kenya was saying how their church needed to buy land and they were going to lose their church. And so instead of my mom donating to like our church in New Jersey every week, she would put like $50 in and donate to buy church land in Kenya, which was just a much more
Can I ask? I'm gonna ask a follow-up question. Well, I want to ask a follow-up question here, because you say, like, it's very intriguing to me, because I think I sympathize with this a lot. I think Protestants generally
totally
sympathize with, like, we want to make sure that our faith is not about the showiness to other people. We believe that it is a full self-sacrifice unto God, right? So it's not about what I get from others in any way. It's about living for the least of these. It's about living as God would have us, and Jesus died on a cross for our sins. That's a big ask. I think the thing that I'd wonder, though, is when you say, like, that's what made you uncomfortable with, like, the church's connection to capitalism. Do you think that that's capitalism, with, like, the church taking a bunch of money into this big institution and then using it on things you don't really fully agree with or understand? Because, like, to me, that sounds a lot more like a socialist system where, like, you have a huge authoritarian government that you give money to, and it's a big milk pot, and it's like, I can't see into it, but, like, what is going on there? So why do you say capitalism for that specifically?
Yeah, I think it's more so looking at the history, like looking at the history of the church and
Sure.
looking at how it was used to like further colonial purposes around the world, like
Yeah.
going into Latin America, going into Asia. And it's funny because during my gap years, I spent time in Jordan, Kenya, Japan, and Thailand. And in each of those countries, I literally was able to find missions and like hear the perspectives of people, like how like that mission had an impact on the country. Again, did you feel like it was imposed on you, or did you feel like it was a real choice when you were going into, or when those missions were coming into your countries? And so I think for me, it's, yes, today it can feel a little bit more like a socialist like system within the institution, but I think looking back at history, it's the roots to colonialism and capitalism that makes me a little bit uncomfortable.
Makes
So
sense.
it's the history with it. Yeah, that's I just was wondering about
Yeah, no, that's
about
okay.
that
Yeah,
detail.
I think I mean, we don't want to riff on this for too long, but
we could go for a long
yeah,
time
we
on
totally
everything.
could. There is a lot of problems with the church and how it's been
The
used.
Catholic Church specifically. No, with the Protestant churches too. With all of them.
Christians, honestly,
Christians
because
generally.
we, Mason and I both believe that like humans are inherently sinful, and you might disagree with that, but like that is a core tenet of our belief, and so it makes sense, and it's very tragic when Christianity is used as a tool to further selfish gains rather than like what we would say is like the baseline intent behind it. And like I think looking at the early church, they were very there was no power associated with the early church, right? Like they were oppressed by Rome and still managed to like thrive under it. And yeah, I think that it's an unfortunate trend in history, but it's not like core to the faith.
Yeah, no. And I mean, that's also part of the basis for why you end up having the Protestant church in the first place, is
Yeah.
that the institutional church can do bad things. I was wondering, because you're mentioning too with like, one of the things that was difficult for you with faith.
I have one more question we got to ask.
Okay,
Sorry, go
one more
ahead.
question on top with him. One of the things that seemed to push you away from Christianity is because of the imposition, right? That sense that was forced onto you. So I then wonder, with like being a social democrat and then talking about like socialism and all these other things, I would say like, isn't that also an imposition of a moral set of values, right, on people? Like quite literally, it's saying like, we need to go and force this onto you because ultimately it's for the good of people, right? And so maybe your family was doing the same thing with you, and ultimately that caused you to reject it. So why do you think then that like you ended up still thinking that you need to do something similar with other people with a different set of values? Maybe you can characterize it differently. That's just kind of my knee-jerk reaction.
No, this is genuinely an amazing question. I think the difference is I am a big free speech advocate. And I think when it comes to religion, that has to do with how you're thinking. Whereas socialism, we're not telling you a certain way to think. It's more so an economic system that, yes, may be imposed on you in order to make society more just, but it's not imposing a certain thought on you, a certain belief system on you. I think you may disagree with that, but as
Yes.
someone who is like very full free speech, very full, First Amendment, I think with religion, it's more about a thought, whereas with socialism, it's more about an economic system, which makes me a little bit more comfortable with it. But really great
It's a great
clarification.
question. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, yeah. Will, what's your question?
Mine's not as deep, but it's more practical. If there is one thing, because this is a Christian podcast after all, so if there's one thing,
Wait, I didn't know that. No, I'm just kidding.
if there was one thing, we do skew a little bit too far into like conservatism sometimes, but like at the core, I really
Of course,
want it
yeah.
to
At
be
the
about
core, it's supposed
Christ.
to be about our Christian values, but then we talk about politics all the time.
Yeah, because it's in the news. Anyway, if there was one thing that could be true about Christianity, like if you could pick out one thing that you were taught growing up, or like something that sounded really good but you ultimately like don't believe, what would that be?
There's too many to name.
Oh, amazing.
Like, honestly, truly. Like, I think the whole idea, like, my mom was telling me, she was like, you should have came to church last Sunday. And I was like, why? And she was like, well, they were talking about how Jesus was a refugee. And, like, how, like, you all need to be kind to refugees and to immigrants because you should be treating people who are marginalized and who are at the bottom of society like you would have treated Jesus. And I very much resonate in that. I think many of the progressive values that I do have are religious Christian values at the end of the day. Like whether it be treating immigrants a certain way, like loving your neighbor.
Yeah, rooted in human dignity. Basically.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I don't think that it has to be in contradiction. And like, that's why I think I do have a lot of similarities with, for instance, like with Ripken, who is conservative Christian as well, because we did realize we have these same values. But for you, maybe it's rooted in the Bible. And for me, it's rooted in progressivism. but the values are the same at the end of the day.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thanks. Great.
That's really nice. I like that explanation of kind of the moral overlap too that can exist. But
If you
kind of
feel
going
that
deeper into this, also you are already on Instagram. You have a massive following. A lot of people listen to you. All this other stuff.
Huge.
And so kind of we're wondering, how did that start? How did you get into social media world? What launched you?
Yeah, so I only started posting back in March, so this is like a very new thing. And I used to do a lot of work at the UN. I have a lot of thoughts about the UN and its bureaucratic ineffectiveness, but there are a lot of UN influencers online who kind of like go to the UN, post these videos of them talking, and make it seem like it's this like golden ticket, like it's the epitome of all good in the world and all good in international law and systems. And since I was working at the UN, I was like, I don't know, this could be cool to just like post a random little video of like something that happened. So I was sitting in a Security Council meeting, and one of the U.S. ambassador at the time said something about how the U.S. is going to step out of UN affairs, step out of the UN, and like we think we should abolish it essentially. And so I just posted that video, like it wasn't even me, and it went like viral. And I was like, oh, like I didn't realize that people had such negative feelings about the UN. Maybe I should continue posting about this. So then I posted another thing about the UN, and it got a lot more hate, all from the right. And I was like, oh, maybe I should post more videos on this. And so I kept posting videos, not because I was like getting support from it, but actually because I was getting a lot of hate from it, and that fueled like the algorithm of my page. And so I wasn't getting followers at all for the first few months. I was just getting like severe thousands of comments of hate. And it wasn't until maybe like 2 months of doing that like one video reached the right audience, and I was like, oh my God, wait, I'm actually getting some support for this. But yeah, it started off not because people liked me, but because people hated me. So yeah, post as much controversial things as you want, or maybe not. But
See, that's funny. Like I always fight Mason on that because I don't want our content to just be controversial for the sake of being controversial and getting views. And Mason often is like, "Well, that's how we're gonna get."
Well, because this is the problem with social media. It is like Cthulhu. It demands that you sacrifice yourself to it to be able to summon it, right? Like you literally throw yourself out there to the wolves so that they can eat you, and the very act of eating you allows you to get followers, views, likes, all this other stuff. It's a terrible thing, but also it shows that you have a lot of thick skin to be able to do that, because it's not easy to read through comments, especially like name calling, all these other things. I mean, when we talk about any controversial issue, I think one of the hardest things for me personally is when like people that we know on the right come after us. Like people on our own side, it feels like, wait, I'm trying to like fight for you guys, and yet you're in the comments like deriding me.
That's one of the biggest things that I learned from all of this posting, though, is like the amount of leftist infighting is tearing down the party. Like truly.
We would say the same thing. We would probably say the same thing on the right.
I mean, on the right, really?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I don't know that we're at the same level that you guys are right now, but I think we can all see it trending in that kind of direction. Yeah.
It's almost like, I would love to hear this from the right perspective too, but it's almost like all of these people on the left are trying to fight to be as left as possible. And like, you could kind of use the term woke, where it's like, okay, you're not as woke as me, and so I'm going to cancel you. Or like, you need to get woker. And then a lot of people would throw in like, you're white, you'll never understand that. You're colonial because you have this thought. And it's just a lot of this moral high ground playing that I honestly think is driving a lot of people on the left away, because even me, I'm like, I don't even want to say anything because people are just going to tear me down from my own side and make me feel like I'm not good enough, which is the entire reason why people on the left voted for Trump, because he at least made them feel good enough.
I mean, like that's exactly what we feel on the right at times. 100%.
Really?
Oh, totally, yes. I mean, the thing is, like, we have this constant debate on the right called no enemies to the right. Yeah, you should never punch right.
No enemies to the right?
So no enemies to the right is a big thing on the right too. I mean, I would argue that we're much more like loyalist than the left is. So the left is much more ideologically pure, because it seems like you guys care more about being good people. Like, doesn't mean that we don't care about being good people. It just means that, like, often right-wingers, we're going to talk about moral taste here in a second, we care a lot more about loyalty, right? Like, you've got your group, you stand with your group, right? And so it's kind of the same vibe, except what we have an issue with is that, like, with that, you have to then define your values, right? You still have certain values. And if people don't hold them, how do you regulate them? How do you keep them in line, keep them in check if it's literally, well, he's wearing the right stuff? he says the right things, but you know that he doesn't actually agree with you on most of the stuff. And that's what we're seeing with a lot. There's like the Fuentes Groyper side of the right, which is very much like aligned with many of your revolutionary friends on the far left. I mean, literally, Fuentes will say all the time, we need to align.
Friends, I may get in trouble for that.
Oh, well, sorry, I shouldn't say well friends, but like, but people on the far left, people on the far right, right? Yeah. And they ultimately like have the same revolutionary sense about them, and they like have a lot of the same goals, just for different groups. Yeah. So it's difficult. It's difficult dealing with.
I mean, I do think, like how I said that we're trending in that direction, but we're not there yet. I still think that the right is more willing to be a big tent than the left is.
I agree with that.
Well, this is something too that I was thinking about. You guys have such more of a sense of community than the left.
Really?
Like, as in, a lot of people on the left are very jealous, if I'm being honest, about how tight-knit of a community, at least to us, it looks like FedSoc is, in terms of like sharing resources, like sharing internship stuff. And at the end of the day, because I think about this as a lot as a white woman, like at Harvard Law and on the left is so siloed and segregated by identity divisions. As in, like, if you're black, then like you have a lot of, like, usually you'll hang out with the black group or the Latino group or the Arab group. And a lot of times white men and women feel very left out of that. And because they feel like they don't have a place because the left is so divided by identity politics, they're like, well, the right is like willing to open their arms to me. And then you could bring in the church too. The church being a huge aspect of community for people who feel like they don't have a place, especially on the left. And that's why, well, we'll get to this a little bit with like my ideal take of a party, is I think there's such an opportunity on the left to welcome people and say, hey, no, actually you are welcome in this community if we like come around being all working class. Like, you don't need to be a certain identity politic. You don't need to be a woman. You don't need to be of a certain race or ethnicity. Yeah. Like, you are part of our community, and that's okay. But we're not doing that right now. We really aren't.
That's really intriguing. We were going to get a lot more into this. I feel like we laid, as we say in mock trial, we laid a lot of foundation.
2.5 hour episode.
Yeah, we laid a lot of foundation with this episode.
2 per episode.
It may be, honestly.
That's what my dad said.
But we're going to now move in, because we just finished the intro, we're going to move into the first appetizer. Okay, so now before we do our main topic discussion, where we're going to be discussing foreign policy and things, we're going to do a little bit of an appetizer, okay? This is kind of to bring out some of our political differences and actually to explain them on a deeper root level. Great. Jonathan Haidt has this book. It's called The Righteous Mind, I believe.
I really like him.
He's wonderful. He's a psychologist, where he basically explains that people have different moral tastes, right? Moral value tastes, okay? And that those often shape their politics. They're often like the baseline to our political views without us realizing that they're the baseline to our political views. And so he created a set of hypotheticals.
So everything we just said about maybe having like common ground in values is about to be deep.
It's about to be. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that. Here we go.
Yeah, so that's exactly what's about to happen. We're going to test this.
Maybe not.
Okay? I'm going to give several hypotheticals, okay? Several hypotheticals. These are all from his book. They're not written by me. They're going to get progressively more inappropriate. So if you, at some point, are like, that was pretty bad, the next one's going to be worse, so just, like, skip ahead, okay? But
and I have not seen these.
The question for each of you to answer, okay, is it morally wrong? So that means that it's wrong in all places, at all times, with all people, or if it's simply a matter of cultural taste, meaning that it could be right at some times in some places.
Even in one instance.
Even in one instance would mean it's not morally wrong then, right?
Okay.
I mean, don't write around it and be like, well, what happens if your life was on the line? And like, think about purely like the hypothetical as it is. These people are free of choice. They're doing this out of their own volition. Like, completely fine, okay?
Okay.
Here we go. So first one. This is the simplest one, nice and easy, okay? Someone owns an American flag and uses it to clean their toilet. Afterward, they wash the flag thoroughly and store it away. The flag belongs to them and no one else is affected by them doing that. Is it morally wrong?
Absolutely not.
I would say not either.
Why?
Yeah.
Why?
You want to go first?
You can do what you want with what you own.
I would say because it's not affecting anyone else, and like no one, like they're still treating it with some respect afterwards by cleaning it thoroughly and rehanging it up, and at the end of the day they're not like, holding up a poop stained flag.
I also don't think that even matters. If it's your flag, you can do what you want
but
with the flag.
But it's not your flag at the end of the day.
It's the government's flag or whatever. But it's my government. It's my government.
Exactly. What happens if you're an American?
Yeah,
what happens if you're an American and you're doing this?
But again, you wash it thoroughly. Like if it was just like, they use it to clean their yard or their toilet and then they hang it up as like a symbol of like, this is my government and I think it's shit. sorry, then, I would say that's wrong in all cases. But because they wash it afterwards, I'm good.
That's crazy. No, if it's your flag, you can do what you want. It's your government. You have your own views about your own government. Criticize your government as long as you're not hurting anyone else. Do it in the way that you want.
Wait. So, Will, you're saying that it's only not morally wrong here because they're not using it actually to degrade. They end up washing it and they put it put it away.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, it is still just cloth.
But if they did it purely to degrade it.
Yeah, then I think it's more.
Okay, well, how about this? I'll give you another one. This is a follow-up. This is a follow-up on it. Let's see what that brings out. Someone cuts up their American flag to use as cleaning rags in their house. They do not do this publicly, and they don't mean to make a political statement. Is it
These
morally
are
wrong?
hard. These are really hard.
I mean, I feel like that's easy.
It's the
not
same answer for
morally
you.
wrong. Yeah. I mean, also, look on 4th of July, how, so many girls are wearing the American flag in such inappropriate ways. Makes
me a little uncomfortable.
I don't know.
For real.
I'm like, if that's morally allowed, then how is this? And for the second one you gave, this may be the progressive in me coming out, but I'm like, what is their socioeconomic status? Do they not? Can they not afford rags? Was a flag given out and they're cutting this up and being sustainable? Is this the environmental way to go about things as opposed to just throwing it out or something? That's
a good point.
I don't know.
No, so it's not morally wrong because there are cases where it's okay, I think.
Okay.
I would argue
agree
it's
with.
possible though that's it's useful. I think that's a good way of looking at it. Generally speaking, try not to do too much though, because it's supposed to be they just did this, right? They did it. There wasn't something that forced them. They had other options, things like that. But it's still a good point. It's interesting. Well, I like that you have that sensibility about you of loyalty, as we're going to talk about later. Okay, but now.
Is it clean? Is it dirty?
Yeah, I know he's asking that question of all of them. All right, this is a little bit higher stakes. Okay.
Okay.
A man signs a contract selling his soul to the devil in exchange for money. The contract is legally meaningless, and nothing actually happens to him. There are no consequences. Is signing the contract morally wrong?
No.
I think I'm too dumb for these questions, honestly.
No, don't say that.
Yes, I would say yes. You shouldn't be signing your soul over the devil.
I'm well, I don't want to be canceled for this, but who's to say that the devil exists? In my opinion, I would say that I am agnostic. I'm not atheist. So I'm yeah, sure, a God could exist. A devil could exist. But do I 100% know that it does?
Sure.
No. And so for me, I'm just
Here's what I'll say. I think if you just replace devil in this with any sort of evil entity, you're ultimately you're trading something good, the integrity of your soul or your character for money. And that's where it's this
yeah, but
is
don't
dumb.
people do that every day? 90% of Harvard lawyers do that when they go into big law.
I mean, they certainly could if they're. I mean, I would say not all big law is pure evil. The devil represents pure evil. It'd be selling your soul to go into big law to do something really bad.
To advocate for insurance companies or big oil.
Big oil, sure, I could get behind that.
I was representing insurance
But
companies
not
this
big
summer.
nuclear.
But no, don't worry about it.
Big nuclear all the way.
No. This is very interesting though, because this reminds me of a story in 7th grade. One of my more food insecure friends using the proper language.
Oh, wait,
I was using the proper language.
I was are you trying to say that
Famished.
He was
I think is the
more
correct
like that.
term.
He would talk to one of my other friends. So the dude who's food insecure was atheist, and so he didn't really care about all this Christian and religious stuff. Yeah. And he literally was sitting down one time. One of my friends had Doritos, and he was like, "Can I have a Dorito?" And my friend looked up at him and said, "Only if you give me your soul." And he was like, "Deal." Immediately. And I, as a Christian kid, was like, "Do not do this.
Yeah.
It is not worth it."
This is really bad.
So
no, I
I
think you have the instinct that this is morally wrong, because you would say that there are things that we would sell our souls to in order for money. That was wrong.
Yes, but this was specifically in terms of the devil.
The devil.
And that's what gets me.
Okay.
Because I'm I don't know what the devil represents personally. I think the devil represents something different for each person. And so for someone, it could be big law, but for someone else, it could be killing multiple people.
ACLU
yeah.
or something.
The devil is supposed to be well, no, this is my point, though, is that the devil's supposed to be evil, though, right? He's supposed to be the representation of all those. So whatever you think is evil, that would be you're selling your soul to that, right?
Yeah,
that's what this
I
is.
I also think that we have choice. I personally don't think that it's the devil encouraging someone to do something bad. I think it's just your own choice that you choose to do something bad.
Well, this is a follow-up on this one. Then.
Okay.
This is the next. This one's a follow-up, and then they start getting a little bit more intense.
Great.
Okay, so this one.
I'm waiting for the inappropriate.
Yeah,
This
they
is
get really
exciting.
bad after this one.
Okay.
This is the last good one. Someone uses a Bible they own to prop up a wobbly table. Okay, they are not trying to insult religion. No one else is affected. And also, like, they have other books, they have other things. They're just
Yeah.
using the Bible.
If
I'm okay with that.
I've probably done that before, if I'm being honest. Like, because the biggest book that I had in undergrad was my Bible. So if I ever needed to, like, prop up, like, my phone or something, I did use the Bible.
You know what's crazy, and I don't know if I can articulate this, but I feel more loyalty to the object of the flag than I do to the object of the Bible. Because no, for sure.
That's crazy.
Because the word of God is not contained in pages, but I do think that the flag represents something unique about like the country and about patriotism and all that.
I feel the same way about this too, actually. Don't get me wrong. I believe the scriptures are to be held in the highest esteem of all. But I also agree, though, that I don't think that, like, I look at the book as an actual tome of, like, I don't know, that houses that spiritual value.
Yeah.
It's more that it's a way for me to actually read that text. I still treat the Bible. I'm not going to use a Bible to prop up a table.
Okay.
I
But is
will
it
not do
morally
that.
wrong?
I would not say it's morally wrong, meaning, like, if I walked in and I saw somebody using a Bible for that, I might
like, pull it out
I might
and
like
replace it
literally
with,
replace
like,
it with
the
another
Communist
Bible behind their back,
Manifesto or
100%. But I also wouldn't be so pissed to give an example.
A story kind of related to this. So when I was living in Jordan, I was living with a Palestinian family who was Muslim, and one of the grandparents that I was living with passed away. And so we had a big, like, Muslim funeral. Men and women are, like, separate for, like, 8 days. It's insane. But because I was living in the house, we would have, like, small dinners with the family together. And one of the women, she is in Saudi Arabia. Her husband was, like, very, very conservative Muslim. Like, she could not even take off her hijab inside, which is like something that is not typical in Jordan, at least.
Yeah.
And she gifted me a Quran, like, dedicated to this, like, grandpa who passed away. And it had his name in it and everything. And when that conservative Muslim guy saw that she did that, he, like, tore it out of my hand and was like, how, like, that is the word of, like, our God, essentially, like, Allah. Like, how could you do that and give this scripture, which is so sacred to us, to an impure person? Like, you are supposed to wash your hands before you touch the Quran. That's why there's bidets. Like, you're not supposed to, like, and so I think it's interesting that, like, you guys kind of both root it more in, like, okay, the words are there, but it's not something that, like, you have values beyond the words, whereas, like, at least in this context, like, the Quran was seen as something that inherently had the value in it.
Totally. I mean, we talked about that a lot, me and Mason, just recently, because we were in Israel, if you knew that. And it's very interesting to visit, like, Christian holy sites. And, like, yes, they're important, but they're only important to me in the sense of, like, the historical Jesus. Like, it's cool that there are, like, sites that we believe Jesus actually went to, but they don't hold any, like, sacral qualities to them in themselves. Like, but that is very different for, like, Jews and Muslims who really do identify, like, objects like scrolls or space. Yes, the land too.
You have to access God through things, intermediaries, because we as people are impure, as he's describing, right? In that situation, you would be defiling some of these places if you are not fully ready to enter into them, which is I think it's a nice symbolism that I think Protestants could sometimes learn from. But also, one of the things that we understand in our faith is that, like, God comes into us, lives
our
within
bodies
us,
are the temple.
right? And so it's a very different way to look at faith. It's interesting. Okay,
so our intermediary is the Holy Spirit.
So this was the first half of these moral questions.
Here we go.
Okay, the second half gets a little bit more intense. Okay, a brother and sister kiss passionately on the lips in public. They are adults. They don't have sex. No one is harmed. They just kiss. Is that morally wrong?
Do they know they're brother and sister?
Yes.
Yes, it's morally wrong.
Yeah, I'd have to go with yes on this one, honestly.
Is it just like the knee-jerk? See, this is the thing. This is actually really interesting research.
Is very interesting.
Is that, like, no matter what context you're in, people respond to, like, ancestral questions and say that that's morally wrong. But it is something that, like, is truly universal, actually. But the interesting thing about this question is many left-wingers will not say that they can't come to the point of saying it's wrong, or if they do say it's wrong, they can't explain why they feel it's wrong. So I'd be interested to understand, why do you feel it's wrong?
Yeah, no, if I'm being honest, I'm like, the why is a little bit difficult for me, because I think for me it's more rooted in, like, protection of certain people and of certain groups. I'd have to think about this more. You go.
Oh, well, I mean,
take.
for me, I have a very clear, like, sexual ethic, right? That comes from my faith. And so for me, I have, like, pretty clear lines on, like, what's acceptable and what's not, or what is, like, good and what's not. And so incest falls really outside of that spectrum. But I do think, a question that I kind of have of the liberal sexual ethic now is, like, where is the line that we're going to draw? Because it does seem, a little incoherent to be like, yeah, everything goes except brother and sister, or I mean, even like everything goes, and this is gonna really make you mad probably, but like everything goes except pedophilia or like minor attracted people.
Well, no, that's what I was gonna say in terms
tough.
of like protection. That's what I kind of
Sure.
mean of like, okay, we do need like, there's some people. I was actually recently called not sex positive enough because I didn't support certain forms of polygamy, which is insane. But
Sex positive, that's a new one.
You haven't
My
heard
sex
that?
positive, Mason?
but no, I do think that like the left does tend to, maybe I'm more traditional, but like the left does tend to go a little bit too far on things. Like this also comes up with like fetish positivity. I don't think I personally agree with every fetish that is out there, and I don't think that I need to be celebrating like people having these insane fetishes. I can just think that it's weird. And so I also think that we've gone a little bit too far when it comes to a lot of those things. And what really gets to me is the left will throw it back at other leftists for saying that's a little bit too weird for me. And then say things like, you're not sex positive enough, you're not woke enough, because you don't want to push your boundaries in a certain way that I don't think we need to. Like, I truly think you can be progressive and you can be a feminist, you can be a leftist, but you also can hold certain more traditional views of your own relationship and like what you want in it. And that doesn't make me any less of a feminist or a leftist. It's just a preference.
So as long as you could hold on to that personally, it's not like you want to say that this is wrong, period, but it's just like, I won't say that that's right.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I think that that's where I stand on a lot of things. Maybe that's like also more like libertarian of me in some ways too, where I'm kind of like, okay, people can do what they want, but like I personally do think that that is wrong. Not because it's rooted in my politics.
So you
Yeah.
would say that the incest stuff, this is morally wrong.
Yes.
Would you ban it though?
That's hard. I'm just also against banning things on people though. Like I lean more
Except
towards
capitalism.
No, because I'm democratic socialist. So I'm more towards like working towards the
Okay.
devolution of capitalism.
Right. Okay, that's fair.
As opposed to a revolutionary
Good-
who's like,
good
we just
call,
need to
yeah.
abolish all capitalist systems. Yeah.
Sorry, I derailed
Well,
you.
no. He makes comments like that when I talk all the time.
I do,
too.
I do.
So with that being said, I'm not going to go to the higher stakes question of the incest. There's a worse form. It's also
No,
much
do
more
it.
gross.
What
is it?
It's so bad.
What is
I don't,
it?
Well, we
yeah,
already
it's so
gave the
bad. We're gonna have
disclaimer.
to cut it. It's so bad.
It's having a baby?
It's the one that's really, really gross. It's Julie and Mark are brother and sister. They're traveling together in France and decide one night to have sex. Julie is already taking birth control and Mark uses a condom. They both enjoy the experience, feel closer afterward, and decide never to do it again. I'm telling you, I'm gonna have to cut this. It's so disgusting.
Like truly, I gagged in my
Yeah,
mouth.
that's
a little
pretty
bit.
gross.
Obviously, but this is the thing is that we have a knee-jerk response
Yes,
to
we do.
this, and like a lot of people, especially when it comes to like left-wingers, they have to find a way to explain it outside of simply saying what I think that like we on the right could say, which
yeah.
is what I'll very easily say, which is that like you as a person, the human person has a level of dignity, the body does, and like your relationships to other people have that sanctity, and so because of that, it's my sister. I can't do that with my sister because if I did that, it would defile me. It would defile her. And like that's a difficult thing I think to articulate if you don't believe in defiling,
Yeah,
right?
no, I do think that you're pointing out a major gap in leftist politics and thinking. This also brings up another thing for me of why I may be against this, like morally. A lot of times when we see incestuous relationships, it's because the woman is being taken advantage by her brother or by her uncle or by her like male cousin. And so like as a feminist, I'm more so against like incestual relationships because I also see the inherent gender inequality in it and the abuse against women that is typically associated with this incestual relationships. So
Yeah, I mean, so your sexual ethic is based in consent and
Yeah.
harm, basically.
But in this situation, no one's harmed.
Yeah, that's the tricky thing.
And the woman's on birth control, she's fully consented to this, like all the way through. So this is the reason why I'm saying I think it's harder to be able to react to it with that ethic.
yeah, but you can also make that argument with like guns then too. Like the normal use of guns, no one's getting harmed, but we still have regulations because there's the potentiality for it to be abused.
Yeah, but in this situation though, when it's
Yeah.
like morally wrong, the question is like just in this individual case scenario, right? Not thinking about
Yeah.
like legality, other things, whether it's right or wrong, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
moral, that individual situation, I think it's just more difficult to articulate why it's wrong if you don't have a sense of sanctity. But I think your knee-jerk reaction, though, is saying you do have a sense of sanctity. And most liberals do have a sense of sanctity.
Yeah.
It's just that it's not as pronounced as their other moral tastes. Okay,
Anything
so
else?
well, there are two more, but I'm gonna. I don't know if we should do both of them.
Okay, we'll just do one.
Let's do one.
Pick the spicier one, Mason.
I mean, one of them is just another sexual ethic one, so we're not going to do that. Okay,
Well,
because we've gotten enough into
Can you
sexual
just say it
ethics.
out loud?
Okay,
I really want Mason to just read it.
I'll read this first one. A man buys a chicken at the grocery store.
Oh my
when he,
I don't even
gosh.
know where this is going.
Yeah, okay, I'm telling you, it's really gross. I don't know if I want to say.
Live chicken?
No,
No,
it's
it's
dead.
dead.
He buys it at the grocery
He has
store.
sex
When he
with
gets
the dead
home,
chicken.
before cooking it, he has sex with the chicken. He then washes it thoroughly and cooks it.
Ew.
I know. That's the moral taste question. I'm sorry. Okay, that's we don't have to include that one. Okay, how about this
suppose
one?
I
No,
don't
but
think-
if I'm being honest, a lot of people on the left would be like, "What's wrong with that?" If I'm being 100% honest, but like, I told you, like, I may be a little bit more
Yeah.
conservative and traditional when it comes to this kind of stuff. So
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with having that knee-jerk reaction. I don't know if I can include that. It's so disgusting. Okay, we're gonna do this last one.
did you ask ChatGPT this? Like, how did you?
No, these are.
These were from your mind.
No, these are from Haidt. Haidt himself. He
Haidt.
wrote
Oh my
these. I
goodness,
promise.
you've been making these.
No. I promise I did not come up with these. These are from Haidt. They're all from the book, okay? And so the last one, this tests a little bit of a difference, but it's
Okay.
pretty close still, okay?
Okay.
A family's dog is hit by a car and killed instantly, okay? The family had no emotional attachment to the dog, and they decide to cook and eat it for dinner. The dog was not harmed intentionally, and no one else is affected by it. Is it morally wrong for the family to eat the dog?
No.
Have you been to Vietnam?
Yeah, no, this is like, this is,
No, like it's still widely eaten in Vietnam.
yeah, for
Like,
sure. I have been to Vietnam.
Okay,
I did
so you
not,
know.
I would not eat dog though,
I
because
wouldn't.
I have a personal attachment to them, but
Would
I don't
you
think
eat
it's more-
horse?
I ate horse.
Me too.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
I've ate
I ate
horse
it.
and drank horse milk, so I
Ew.
understand. Yep.
No,
Yeah,
it's
you didn't need to,
That's
you didn't
crazy.
need
It's
to throw in
Mongolia.
the
It's
horse milk
Mongolia.
part,
Listen,
dude.
it's Mongolia. It's very common.
It's tradition to
over
cook
there.
the horse meat in horse milk.
Yeah, no. So we'd
in
eat
some
that in
places,
Mongolia. It's a
yeah.
common thing. Okay, so the interesting thing, I'll kind of give you a brief overview with these moral taste questions. Is if you go to like rural India and ask them, you get very, very different responses. Okay, because there's a whole number of these that I didn't include, where it's like a widow goes and eats fish for lunch. Is this morally wrong? And like every American is like, what the heck did you just ask me?
Yeah.
Right? And like the answer is out in rural India, everybody's like, that is morally wrong no matter where you are.
Right.
And the point is that we all have different senses of all of these moral tastes. These moral tastes being primarily among left-wingers, liberals, more liberal people, have a very strong sense of fairness. Fairness is one of them, meaning like I want to make sure that every group gets treated fair, like equally.
Well, I wouldn't say fairly or equally. I think on the left, it's more about equity than
Yes.
fairness or like equal.
Totally, but
Yeah.
like the equity is supposed to like proxy for that sense of moral fairness, right? By fairness meaning
Yeah.
like you calculate in the past, you calculate in the future, you calculate in all these things
Yeah.
so that people have a fair shot. They have a fair shot at equal opportunity, equal outcome, those things. Okay? And then the other thing that's really, really strong for them is care harm. Is anybody getting hurt?
Yeah,
Is
that
anybody
came up
hurt?
in this little exercise.
But there's other things that are going to happen here too, which conservatives have equal moral taste across all 5 of the accepted ones from Righteous Mind. He actually added another one, the 6th, but we don't need to mention that one. That's just for the libertarians. The other 3 that conservatives tend to have are sanctity. So that's basically a sense that the body is like it's image of God. It's derived from the Bible where God breathed life into the body and the body is a temple unto the Lord. Therefore, there is a way that you treat your body that actually is different from other objects, other things.
Yeah.
Second to that is authority, meaning like if I was placed under my father or mother and my father or mother told me to do something, I do the thing. That's actually one of these other hypos. It's like if your mother or father tells you to do something, you've got to do it. And then the last one, the one that I was talking about earlier with Will, is loyalty. It's that if you're part of a group like America, you owe a moral obligation to America. And it tends to be the case that conservatives have an equal taste across all 5. Liberals mainly have all 5, but the most pronounced are care, harm, and fairness.
Okay.
So, interesting.
Very interesting.
Well,
Okay.
I think it's interesting too that we came to the same conclusions on all of those answers.
Except the flag ones. We were a little different on the
you,
flag ones.
you were more.
I was more
didn't know you were-
wishy-washy than
yeah.
Mason, for sure. But the second flag one I was problematic about, except when you brought up the like, but what if they're like needing this for cleaning because they're too poor to afford other stuff? Then I was like, okay.
Yeah, interesting.
But yeah,
Well,
we
thanks.
did share a lot.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Give us
Totally.
your thoughts. We'd love to hear them. So, current events. That's really what we're getting into here. We wanted to take a little bit of time here, at least in terms of like main topic focus, because of all the things that are going on in the world. Right now, as we speak, actually, there are protests out on the streets in Iran, mass protests. The entire country is in blackout. By the time this video airs, things might have changed. Who knows what those updates will be? So we're not going to focus too much on like specifics of those updates, but what we are going to talk about is like kind of the American role in all of this, right? See, in Iran, in the protests, in striking Iran, in Operation Midnight Hammer over the summer, where America, in coordination with Israel, but largely just America's strike force, took out several of the nuclear facilities of Iran. And then also in Venezuela, where there was a recent operation to literally kidnap the president of Venezuela, if you can call him that, and then bring him back to the country to face charges. So obviously we're getting very involved in the world, and there's a lot more rhetoric. I mean, Trump right now is talking about like possibly
Cuba.
invading like Cuba or Mexico or Greenland, right?
Yeah.
Like take Greenland, and I love the idea of taking Greenland because I want Greenland. That sounds awesome. But like I understand
Wait,
the
was
vibe.
that sarcasm?
No,
I love the
I
idea
don't
of
like
getting
the idea
Greenland.
of
Are you kidding
invading
me?
Greenland.
No, okay, that's
but
different.
I do think that it is a very important
It's a valuable
strategic
asset, and if we can buy it, I would buy it.
I'd buy it.
So
I'd
this
buy
we're
it.
going to come into different opinions. But first off, before we get into all this other extra, like the details of things, it's probably helpful to kind of give an idea of where we're coming from as a background approach to how we view America's role in the world.
Great.
Okay. So traditionally,
you
I was
going first?
isolationist. I feel like I probably shouldn't because I talk too much as is.
Okay.
So do you want to go first?
us to give our view on like if I'm an isolationist or an interventionist?
Yeah. Why don't you give us an idea of how you view America's role in the world?
Great. Okay, I'll go first.
As a
I'll
young-
be very succinct.
Yes.
I'm not an isolationist. At one point in my life, I probably would have said like I tended towards that direction. But I think as I've grown up in wisdom and maturity, I've decided that it actually is important for America to protect its interests both at home and abroad. And so while I don't love the idea of like America as a police force, I don't like that we tried to necessarily impose democracy where it will not be culturally accepted, where we think that everyone's going to like buy into the American idea of democracy. I don't think that's a goal that we should be going for. But I do think that like when we were just joking about Greenland, certain interventions that we believe benefit America, I'm in support of those. And so if Venezuela intervention like benefits America, then I think we should do it. And I know we're going to disagree on this. I don't have a huge respect or interest in international law. I like America first is thrown out a lot in conservative circles on the isolationist side, but I think that I'm like America first as an American and a Canadian. Canadian interests and American interests first. And if that means we have to like do things in other countries, so be it. That's how the card falls.
Wow. Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm wise and old. How old are you?
28. You're 27?
I'm 26. But anyway.
He's got 2 years of wisdom on you.
He does have 2 years. Maybe I'll transform by then too. I'm just kidding.
That would be great. Just kidding.
It's funny because I, as a progressive leftist, I just first want to clarify this. I take a very different view on this than liberals. And so kind of like we clarified, this is one of the biggest difference between being a leftist and being a liberal is your thoughts on intervention in the U.S. military. Liberals are very in support of the U.S. military, very in support of increasing funding for it and engaging in these interventions abroad for mostly capitalist purposes and, like you said, to further U.S. American interests. For me as a progressive leftist, I take a much more isolationist view. I would say that I agree with the very far right people in your circles.
There's a lot of those,
like Marjorie Taylor Greene. Like, you remove her name on a lot of her tweets about U.S. foreign intervention, and I'm like, she's a leftist. Like, I love that. That's exactly how I feel about things. For me, I just look around and I see so many problems in our own country that I'm like, why on earth are we spending billions of dollars and sending it away when we have people in our own country who are homeless? We have people in our own country who can't eat, who don't have health care. And I say this because some of these were issues that affected myself growing up. And so for me, it's a very personal thing to want to make sure that people in the U.S. have access to our own resources. Yeah. We can use our tax money for our own things, as opposed to, like, if I'm being honest, why are we helping people abroad then?
I agree.
Yeah,
Can I actually respond to that really quick?
Respond,
I think that's why I kind of tried poorly to draw the line between, like, helping other countries versus helping America through our intervention. That's where I draw the distinction. And I totally agree. We have a ton of problems in America, and that's kind of why I sympathized initially with isolationism, because I was like, yeah, we need to fix what we have going on here.
Yeah.
We don't need to go fix what's going on in Iraq or Iran. As much as I want to, as much as I would love for those people to be like living in a more beneficial society or an equitable society, like, we have problems here. So that's why I'm like an interventionist only insofar as it benefits us. And so which we might not, if we think that like taking Venezuela and taking their oil and like having that somehow come back to like benefit America, then like I'm in support of that. And then I was going to respond to one other thing, but now I've totally forgotten.
But see, I also think that this might be an interesting point of contention too, is that like often more on the left too, there's more of a sense of like a global citizenry kind of vibe.
That is what
right?
I was going to say.
Where it's like,
yeah.
I as an American am first and foremost loyal to America as a country, right? And so as much as I like care as a Christian I care for other people's all the way through. I also have an obligation to my state in the sense of like, I want America to do well, and I can't have all of these other countries' interests out there juggling all of them, especially when they're competing at times.
Yeah.
If I'm going to choose one between those interests, I'm going to choose America. And I'm then going to try to use America in the ways that I think are good as a Christian, right?
Yeah, I think, because I've had this conversation with a few friends, because this is even on the left, like, no one really knows what the right answer is. I think it all comes down to your view on American hegemony. Do you think that the United States should be the number one global superpower, and that's the right thing, and that there shouldn't be other countervailing powers? For me, I think that it is a good thing to have China competing with us. I think that actually like drives our markets, like drives the US to be even better, because we have another country that we are competing with. As opposed to, I think maybe you take more, I don't know what your view on this is, of like, no, the US should be the number one country, like there is no other power competing with us. We absolutely are the best.
So economically, I would agree with you, but militarily, I would say that I want America to be the best.
Absolutely.
And that's why that is what I was going to bring up when you were talking about not spending so much money on our military. First of all, as Mason and I often point out, we have way bigger budgetary issues in America than our military. I think that like we often harp on social
discretionary spending when it's all non-discretionary.
Yeah, like the non-discretionary spending is what I would love to fix so that we can address more problems domestically. But what I was going to kind of ask you is on this tension of like, it's okay that China competes economically, but I am really uncomfortable if they supersede us in the military, because I believe that as much as the U.S. is a very flawed actor in the world, there are worse actors in the world.
This is the fundamental thing that
China
I think
is a worse regime than America.
I think both of us
Russia
would
as
look at
well.
America and say that we are a better country than others. Like I would say that all the way through. Like I understand that doesn't mean that I think we're a perfect country in any way, form, or fashion. I come from a long line of people who have been hurt by America and helped by America. But my point is that like
Mason
genuinely,
has Cherokee in him.
Yeah, I have a lot of different types of like.
Wait, why don't you go talk to Elizabeth Warren?
Yeah, she's around here. But no, it's like the point with that being that like there is a mixed bag here, but I look over at other countries and I think that they also, especially on the national stage, I see sovereigns as I kind of ascribe to the Niebuhr view of how collectives operate, and that is that they're going to fight for their own self-interest regardless of what you try to do, and that they're going to try to eat up other people's oil and use it for themselves and establish their own world order because it benefits them. Sure. And we have established a world order, a unipolar system, which is now possibly moving to bipolar if China can get its act together, but there's some reasons to believe that might not happen. And that helps us. The USD being the reserve currency, I mean, that has truly, fundamentally changed our ability. We finance our entire welfare system on debt. And the reason we can do that is because we can print limitless amounts of money, and other countries will buy our debt limitlessly because they need us to exist, right? And so there are real benefits to the American people from the world order that we've established and that we maintain with the big military, with other things like this. And so I think that like my initial reaction when I see a lot of this is I have a bias as a moral matter, maybe I shouldn't say moral, but as a citizen of the country and pragmatically. But I think there's an aspect that could be moral because I do believe that like Americans, especially from the fact we'll have this conversation, that they are interested in the plights of other peoples. Like I genuinely do believe that. And I think that like the fact that we would even discuss like international law as a concept, right? And be like, how could the military go and strike these civilians? It's not our business to be in there. And we debate back and forth. That to me is the sign of a country that I'd rather have in power than one that's like, oh, there is Xi Jinping and he makes the decision. That scares me. So I don't know. It's up to you.
We've talked a lot now. Yeah, we've talked a lot at you. Now let's have a conversation.
This is good because I need to collect my thoughts on a lot of this stuff, if I'm being honest, because I don't hear it from the right as much. But I think there's also the moral question of like, who are we then to build our, supremacy on the backs of other countries, if that makes sense? Like, I think you're right that there is a lot of like interest in like putting the U.S. first and maybe like going through interventions that puts the U.S. first. But I think we should be thinking about the people and like how we're building this interest. Are we putting others down in order to get to the top? And that's where things sit really wrong with me, because a lot of times these interventions are like rooted in exploitation. I think to your point on like the fact that this country is even thinking about the morality of these things, I just think that that's all a show, especially from Democrats. Like, I do want to point out that I think Obama was one of the worst when it comes to this, of presenting himself as this like angel and like preserver of democracy and women's rights. Like Clinton too always said this. She was like, oh, like I love women's rights. That's why we went into the Middle East. But I genuinely think that it's disgusting as a progressive to see these politicians abusing the concept of human rights and progressivism, when at the end of the day, a lot of this is rooted in the desire to profit, is rooted in capitalist interest, and is rooted in just them keeping power, whether that be politically or not economically.
How do you think that applies then to like the Venezuela situation, right? Where you have a regime that has starved its people. Millions of its people have fled because of how horrible its governance is. Yeah. They're out in the streets celebrating when Maduro gets arrested because of how horrible that regime is. It's a full-on far-left socialist regime that came into power on the backs of that narrative, actually.
Yeah, that the U.S. was
the U.S. was exploiting it because there was a bunch of U.S. oil companies that were running the oil rigs in the country, and they came in, they nationalized it, they had initial economic boom, and then everything fell apart. Many of my friends will respond to this by saying they blame America. They say, well, it's because we put sanctions. They did all these other things. It's always America. America's fault. America that does this. America does these other things. But my worry, though, is that like I look at that regime and I see these people celebrating, and I talk to them individually, and also the system that they've set up. It looks to me like this is just how the system was designed to work, that they were going to sell, that these countries were going to sell to anybody they could, that they were going to maintain power, that Maduro's regime was about Maduro. Right? And so my question then is like, how do you look at U.S. intervention in Venezuela? Should there ever be a U.S.? Do we have a moral imperative, especially if we should care about other countries?
And then can I just say really quick, an add-on? I think you talked about exploitation, and Venezuela is a pretty good point to this, I think. Like, Venezuela, if we use the word exploitation, was being exploited by other countries, Maduro, China. Iran, China, right, Russia, like. And at least, I guess, yes, like, has the U.S. exploited other countries for our own sake? Yeah. I still kind of have a fundamental trust that we will do it less bad.
We'll do the exploitation better.
Like, kind of. I'm sorry, but, like, kind of. I do sort of hold that, like, I think
it's belief somebody's going to buy it. That's the idea.
At least that we can have dialogues within our country on how to do it better. That's not happening in Iran. That's not happening in China.
Also, small point, I do
do
think
it better and more fair to the people.
It's interesting.
But honestly, in China, though, like, I think that they're doing their imperialism around the world through development, whereas the U.S. is doing it through military. And I agree with China's way of doing imperialism more, even though I'm anti-imperialist.
But it is, I mean, it's not good faith. I don't think that they're
No, it's not good faith, but we're not doing it in good faith either. We're not like establishing foreign military bases around the world because we really want to protect that country.
You don't think there was any good faith?
I strongly would disagree with this on the basis of like, I don't know. I think there are a lot of historical instances where you can say that like the U.S. has done terrible things in other countries all the way through, and I do think that we're very like open sometimes, and sometimes we're not. I think honestly one of the things that I wish we did more of is be more open with the fact of what our interests are, right? We come in, we're often like, oh, morality, we're here to help you out. That's so nice and great. What I think we should come in and say is, listen, like with Venezuela, a good example. Yeah. This is an evil regime. You guys are doing bad things, okay? We're not going to like let a thug run a country if he's going to run it into the ground and work with our foreign adversaries to make it to stay in power, right?
In all honesty, I don't think that the regime change was because of that. I truly think it was because of the oil, but I will say that I truly respect that Trump actually was very open about it. Like, when have we ever seen a Democrat president be like, I'm going to go invade Iraq because I want oil, or I'm going to go somewhere in the Middle East because I want oil? The fact that Trump was able to say that, I think, is actually admirable, if I can use the word, because at least there's no performativeness, which is what I have a huge issue with Democrats, especially elite Democrats.
How do you think that the U.S. should, because this goes back to my first question. Before I even explain anymore, I want to actually let you talk through things. Sorry, I keep jumping in. But what do you think then the U.S. should have done with Venezuela, especially with the regime as it is? Take all the history, go back to before that operation happens, before Operation Absolute Resolve.
Okay.
What should we be doing? So this is like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, not 1999. All right. We're not going that far back.
I think that there is a huge issue with black and white thinking, where it's like either the right thing to do was to like leave Maduro in office and like let people like experience all of these political repression and human rights abuses, or the right thing to do is U.S. intervention. And the fact that we are not allowed to think with nuance is something that I think is incredibly dangerous in politics on both sides. I've gotten a lot of hate because I have, like you two, have talked to Venezuelans on the ground, like who have left their countries because their families were threatened with being killed, and just listening to them, listening to their stories and their voices, Maduro was an abusive dictator. And the fact that that's even a controversy is crazy to me. And I think it's incredibly disgusting of the left, like my own colleagues, even some of my own friends who say, how can you say that? How can you say he's a dictator? He's anti-colonial. You're actually just being colonial by calling him a dictator. But in that, we're negating the experiences of everyday people and communities, and I don't think that's very progressive to do, just because you're standing on this principle that this guy is saying he's anti-colonial. And so, for me personally, I do take the position that Maduro was an abusive dictator, and something needed to be done. Do I think U.S. intervention was the right way of having this be done? Absolutely not. And I think that is rooted a lot in history of the U.S. in Latin America, especially with Operation Condor during like the 70s, 80s, where we really just went in, overthrew all these leftist leaders, and then installed all of these right-wing puppet dictators, and tens of thousands of people were disappeared and killed.
So the follow-up question here, though, is I also feel like this is part of the reason why I'm kind of more of an interventionist, is I kind of feel like that we're inevitably on the map, right? Like we exist in this corner of the hemisphere, and what happens in Venezuela like clearly has an impact on us, right? If millions of people are fleeing the country and then coming into our country, if there's drug trafficking into our country because of what's happening in the regime, it is impacting everyday Americans, right? And like what one of my friends was arguing with me is he was like, well, all of this is happening is because we've sanctioned Venezuela, right? So does this mean that like then we just shouldn't be sanctioning? We shouldn't have like we should just play it nice with all of these regimes, with China, with Russia? Should we just like kind of step back from the world order generally? What do you think that the right approach, given the fact that like American interests are always going to be, especially when they're put out there in the world, very capitalist, right? They're going to be very self-centered. How can we operate? Is there any operation, right?
I find myself being very against sanctions. I saw this one graphic, actually. I'll share it with you guys. But essentially it shows like how Venezuela's economy was doing before the U.S. sanctions, and like how the petrostate essentially was operating, where it was operating very efficiently until the sanctions were implemented, and then it completely plummeted. However, I think blaming all of the country's ills on sanctions and on how the U.S. has treated Venezuela is also just not factual at all. There was something else I was going to say, but I can't remember.
I can quickly share a counterpoint. Like it's not database. It's just a personal experience that I had when I was in Cuba. I was very surprised when I was in Cuba because people there, this was during the Biden administration, and people were craving Trump there that I talked to.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you go as an American to Cuba, you can't stay in like state-owned hotels, which is all the hotels there. You have to go like do house stays. And I would, talk with people about it, and they were very appreciative that I was there doing that as an American. But they were also very pro-Trump, and they pointed to like Obama kind of normalizing relationships with the regime and lifting sanctions, and how that actually all that does is empower the regime to stay in place. And so Cuba was like craving Trump to come back in and put hard sanctions on. And like, I think that Cubans now are pretty hopeful with what we did in Venezuela, because it's putting a lot of pressure on the regime now, because they're not going to be getting this like money from Venezuela. And so I sort of I had the assumption that sanctions were just going to hurt the people. And like the view that I experienced there was from a limited number of people, but like actually, yeah, sanctions hurt us a lot, but we would rather have that in the long term, because that's our only hope to ever like rise above this dictatorship and actually overthrow them.
Because it funnels money into their pockets.
Yeah.
I think what a lot of people would argue, though, is like the type of people that you probably were talking to. Of course, you were staying in their homes, so they're a little bit more upper class, and sanctions are not really. The people in the upper class are not going to be the main targets of those sanctions. A lot of them are the people who are like already marginalized and of the lower socioeconomic statuses already. And so I think their view of sanctions would probably be like much,
I mean,
much
upper class
different.
in Cuba is still only like $10 a
Yeah.
day. Like, you know, it's still really poor, but I get your point. I think, yeah, they would just say that, or they did say that in order to like have a revolution and people to get really desperate for revolution, it has to get really bleak before it gets better.
I think this, though, also points to the biggest question, which I always ask myself, is like, what is the answer then? Like, we have this abusive dictatorial regime that is committing human rights abuses. We know this is happening, but we also know that when the U.S. tends to come into places, we also make it worse. We install other puppet leaders who do the same thing, just claiming to be right or left.
Right.
And I don't know, like, can you guys name a country that you do think that like the U.S. has intervened in that is like incredibly better off afterwards?
Japan, but that's a small point.
Maybe Germany, too.
Japan is actually a perfect
But
example
I
of
think
that.
those were more occupations than.
This is the point, though, is that it requires a lot.
Yes.
It requires a lot to be able to do
both
it.
of
It's
those were
possible, yeah, and you need an assimilation, like an actual, like
Korea.
you need like a long-term effort. You need it to be all the way through.
Yeah.
Something we should have done in the
Complete
South, which will piss
re-education
off a lot of my
program.
right-wing friends, but it's true. We should have been much more forceful in the South.
In the South?
Absolutely, we
Like
should
in
have.
South America?
There should in the South after the Civil
Oh,
War. It's one of the
absolutely.
biggest problems. One
Totally.
of the worst things that ever happened in this country.
For
But
sure.
many of my
We should
right-wing
have
friends
stayed
are pissed
there
by that
until
comment. It's true, though.
2012.
But my point is that there are instances where it really made sense to do that, right? Germany, denazifying it takes a lot of effort. That's worth it. I think Japan is the exact same situation. And that's coming from us, by the way, after we just spent tons of American blood to get to that place. And now we're going to invest American treasure and time and all these other things in rehabilitating that country. That's a lot. That takes a lot to do that. But I think it's possible. Do I think that it's something that the American people have the appetite
have
for?
the will for it.
Absolutely not. So instead of doing that, you should do, that's the reason why I like what the Trump administration did here, which is like as much as it sounds like they're focused on regime change, and maybe by the time this episode airs, like there's a whole new regime and I don't know what they're doing, but like just take the snapshot right now. They went in and they arrested 2 people. Right, they arrested the leader of the country and his wife, and they arrested them on very specific charges. And they're still now trying to work with the other people in the regime. And so what they're really saying is, listen, we're not going to be able to fundamentally change everything about this country because we don't have the willpower to go in, and there's a culture there, there's systems of governance, there's corruption, there's all of these other things. Instead, what we're going to do is just do what we normally do, which is apply pressure. We're going to apply pressure to try to assert our interests, but also to try to help the people on the ground. And I think those are the 2 things that are happening. You can argue many people, whether far right, far left, will be like, it's not helping the people on the ground. It's not helping our interests, whatever. But I think that's a much better tactic to be using as like an American Secretary of State or American president than we're going to invade Iraq, because you're not going to be able to stick around long enough to be able to affect the sort of change that you want to. And when you leave, as Obama did, ISIS is going to come around. Other things are going to be much worse. So instead, what you should do is you should use selective pressure. You want to show that, listen, if you're not going to change, we'll go after you individually. Absolutely. And that means that these guys, you know what they're thinking? I think it's Delcy is how you say her name, the vice president. Like what she's thinking now is like, are they going to come for me next? And that does change your calculus. That fundamentally changes your calculus. And you had Iran, Russia, and China all trying to protect you with the Cuban Guard, and we got out without a single casualty. That's scary.
We had 40 casualties of Venezuelan locals.
Okay, well that's okay. Well, obviously, yes, those are terrible things. I'm not saying that I like that there's people who are killed, but I'm saying that American casualties. So it's the point of us being able to get in and get out without really much of a question, right? And so my big thing with this is I don't think that like my view is to go nation build. I don't think that I'm like a neocon like that. I just think that we're on the map, and if we're going to be on the map, we should assert our interests. And I think it's kind of foolish not to, actually, because everybody else is going to. everybody else is going to. And so I don't know how else you respond to that if everybody else is going to be doing it. How are you going to not play the game?
I had something to say about the arrests, if I'm being honest, because I truly think that we can't. You did use the word kidnapping in the intro and then switched it to arrests. And I think that that's a very important distinction when it comes to how we are viewing these leaders, because I think what happened was a full kidnapping. I think we went into a place and we kidnapped two people that we did not have like the jurisdiction to do. And I think when we're setting that very dangerous precedent, when we look at U.S. American interests, who's going to stop China then from just like creating a domestic case in China saying Trump violated it? Then we're just going to fly our plane to Washington, D.C. and scoop him up. Who's
stop
stopping
that?
We
We
stop
would
that.
stop
This
that,
is I think
Harvey.
the argument is international law doesn't exist. It's us. I'm sorry, like it's like all of this stuff, the law, these other things. It's a game of animals all fighting each other, and it's whoever has the strongest bite. I'm sorry.
Good actors.
No, this is honestly because as someone who has like wants to go into international law and who has like done many courses in international criminal law, I think what really, really got me annoyed with this was the fact that, like, for instance, Netanyahu has had these, like, literal international arrest warrants against him, and no one has had the balls to go in and just, like, say, I'm going to arrest you then. Even when it would have been legally, like, when he was in Greek and Italian airspace, they legally could have done that. But then we're doing the same for a domestic warrant. In just going into another country and arresting them, I think that just scares me.
Well, it's also different though because we're enforcing our own laws there, right? So like what I'm saying is that, like, I don't think international law exists. And so because of that, when they say we're going to go arrest you because you've done all of these bad things to our country, you've allowed like drug trafficking into it, all of like illegal immigration, there's I'm trying to remember the name of the Venezuelan crime group, but there's a really influential one.
Cartel of the Suns.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. When you have actual charges, these people have definitely broken American laws with the things that they've done. I'm completely okay with using that as a basis to go after them. And I think it's because of the fact that, like, again, international law is enforced by a gun. It's enforced by the gun of the state, by all of these states competing with one another. And do I think that means that you should just willy-nilly go out and use it all the time? Should we just go invade Greenland right now and take it because there's resources for the grabbing? Probably not, because what does that tell our allies? Our other allies might start thinking, well, what happens if they go after this other thing that we have, and then they don't want to work with us, and they cut us off, and they sanction us? They actually have tools to push back against us. But that's the whole point, though, is that everybody's got tools. Everybody's got pressure tools to put on each other, but everybody wants things, right? That's how I see it.
I also, though, think that this is like a great opportunity because I've done a lot of work at the United Nations, and I see how completely ineffective it is. Like, everyone's just sitting there talking as pawns. I think that this would be a great opportunity to actually revamp it so it does have power, and so that instead of maybe depending on the United States to go in and do these interventions with like our military, like what if, just think creatively out of the box right now, we did have like a global democratic system with a military behind it that could all vote on this and say, okay, we all agree Maduro is a horrible person. We are going to go in and remove him. I think that I would be a lot more ethically okay with an intervention like that than an intervention that is like rooted in just the U.S. doing it without asking anyone else.
Can I make this? I think this is great. There was actually an amendment back in the 1800s to change the name of our country from the United States of America to the United States of Earth. In line with that, if the global force enforcing it is us, I'm cool with it.
Yeah, I was going to kind of say that
This is the
too.
problem, is
You
that
know,
I think it's like, if you're going to have the global force, I think that, like, I don't want to be in a situation where I have to have China telling me what to do. That sounds really bad to me.
I don't know, that sounds democratic to me.
But what happens if they tell you to intern all of your? What happens if they tell you to intern a whole like a minority population?
They're
We're not going to do that.
I mean,
that's what I'm saying.
We would do that. We have done that.
Well, but that was bad. And what I'm saying is that we have been able to change, and actually now we have museums where we say that is horrible, and we give like actual repayments to those people that were affected by those things, right? So like, I would rather have a country that can respond to its ills and wrongs rather than like subjecting us to the whims of the world. I think that's why I'm saying I think the rest of the world, I don't trust as much as I trust America.
But I don't think that we do. I think we respond to the ills and the wrongs that happen within our own country, but I think we very much fail to do that to people around the world who we've wronged. Like, especially looking at like the global war on terror. I think Brown University had like a study that came out where it was like 5 million people in the Middle East died because of the war on terror who were all civilians. What have we done for those people? Like, who are we to say? Like, I think with America First comes that like we do need to have these repayments. We do need to acknowledge our own wrongs within our own country. And I think that we do a little bit of a better job at that. But I think when it comes to wrongs that we've done around the world to other people, that is where we're failing incredibly.
No, I don't think I disagree that there are horrible mistakes that this government has made that have cost hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives.
Do you think it's mistakes? Because I think that it was a deliberate.
Sometimes it's deliberate, sometimes it's mistakes. I don't look at it all as like,
I don't black and
like
white
these
it
people
either.
are all
Okay,
exactly.
fair,
Just
fair.
talking about from the
Yeah,
black and white perspective,
fair.
I think a lot of times it is genuinely that people were convinced that like they could nation build.
Yeah.
And I think that's why actually I look at a lot of socialists in the same way, frankly. Like I think that there are a lot of very well-intentioned people. Like I think that they come in and they're like, I'm going to fix the system, and then they ruin it. I look at like these individuals, and afterwards it's kind of like maybe they weren't so sincere, but I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. And so I kind of see the same way with foreign policy with America. Yeah.
I wanted to jump in a long time ago.
Yeah, sorry, okay.
Because I was just, it was a question that I had, and it was kind of like on the topic of having nuance in black and white stuff, right? You asked, like, well, name an example where America's done this well, and then Mason said Japan and Germany. And I think we lost the will to kind of like have boots on the ground, long-term strategy in Vietnam, and then that got perpetuated by Iraq and Afghanistan.
We don't have an appetite for that. No.
We don't have an appetite. I kind of have an appetite, okay? And this kind of...
But my thought process is you
listen.
need to be willing to put yourself on the line for that, though.
Well, I did.
I know you
okay?
did. That's what I'm saying.
Now, like what I was gonna say is, I think there's not nuance, at least in like, where do we think we could actually have a nation built? Like, I think Japan and Germany, probably in Korea, like recognize that if we put effort in, we could rebuild these guys into like strong allies. And I think naively, we looked at Vietnam and we kind of said, yeah, we could probably do that there. We looked at Iraq and Afghanistan, we could probably do that there. But I think if we're gonna be interventionist in like the kind of, I don't know, most like helpful to humanity sense, we have to look critically at like, where do we think this could actually succeed?
Yeah.
Where do we think we could actually build a regime and a democracy like Germany and like Japan that's like thriving in 50 years?
Yeah.
And I think that's a question I have on Iran right now, is like, I don't just want to repeat the same mistakes, but I'm not like as opposed to like boots on the ground in Iran. I wonder if there's like some sort of like structure there that this could actually succeed in.
I
as opposed
posted
to
about this,
Afghanistan.
and it was called a CIA agent, actually, because I am very
That's
much
great.
against U.S. intervention.
Okay.
However, I think there are extreme circumstances, kind of like you're saying, that sometimes we do need someone to step in. Like, I mean, look at the Rwandan genocide. That's why we have the responsibility to protect doctrine, like in international law, because we really did just take a little hands off. Same with, like, I think if you ask a lot of progressives what their view on Gaza is, like, we are all very pro-Palestine, and we're also very angry at our own governments for not doing enough to stop Israel. But that's exactly. And so that's kind of like where my moral divide on that is, because do I think that there's a lot of leftists who take this interpretation that U.S. intervention is 100% always morally bad, if we want to get back to morally bad. But I don't think that we can take that black and white thinking 100%.
And this is why I wanted us to start with the whole question of like how you view America, because I really do think that most of the
Yeah, it boils down to
interventionist,
that,
isolationist discussion is whether you think it's a relatively good force for good. I guess that's really confusing.
No, I think it makes
sorry,
total sense.
what I'm trying to say though is that like I think it's important to think about that though, because most of the time when I'm discussing this issue with people, that's the first assumption that's really built in, and like as soon as you disagree on that, it's really hard to get to anywhere else. Because then like if you think that our main interest in Venezuela is like we'll bomb all the people, we'll kill everybody, we just want the oil, then obviously any U.S. intervention you're not going to trust. Right? That's very reasonable. But like my thing is that I don't see our nation that way. I don't think that's fully true. And I've actually seen also very successful interventions. Like one of the first interventions that helped our country is the French intervention in our own Revolutionary War. Right? The fact that the French showed up and blockaded at Yorktown, that Lafayette is there with French forces, that's what allows us to get secure Cornwallis' surrender. What builds our nation from the very beginning is another nation coming in and saying, you are being tyrannized. It was strategically beneficial for them to do it, even though it actually kind of hurt them in the long run because they overspent.
Right.
But there's a small point there of saying, like, there is a way to step in, and I think Iran might be an example of that possibly, where you say, like, I'm going to help you, these people who are speaking out for themselves against a tyrant. Against a tyrant.
Yeah,
I have a
I mean, I really
philosophical
want
question
to
on
visit
this.
Tehran, so I'm selfishly motivated that I want to go to Iran really bad.
I know, it does look real nice.
Yeah.
It's a-
Persia.
Persia, yeah, let's reestablish the Persian
I have a
Empire.
Persian cat.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
We need to
Well,
talk
don't
about
say
your
that out
cats
loud,
and
dude.
dogs, dude. She's a crazy cat lady, guys.
Stop, I am.
Okay, sorry.
But I think that this is such an interesting conversation because it's almost like as on the left and the right, we have different interpretations of like goodness and like evil when it comes to governments versus human beings. Because as kind of we started this, you were explaining how you have this view that like human beings are inherently evil, but then you have this view that the government is inherently good.
No.
Okay.
Definitely not. No, so,
Okay,
so that's why.
clarify
That's
that
why.
for
No,
me.
that's why I said.
That's
Well,
why
just real quick.
democracy is
That's the reason why I said
essential.
relatively. That's why I said relatively because I'm
Okay,
dealing.
so
I'm dealing in the
in
dirt.
comparison
I'm dealing in the
to,
dirt.
like,
Like
Yes,
like
exactly.
we're all muddy.
100%.
We're all super
That's why I
freaking
was
muddy.
like, huh, I
Oh
don't
no.
know.
Our thought process
relative
is
to
somebody's
others.
going to be the top dog. Somebody's
Yeah.
going to be there no matter what. This is the conservative way of thinking. Somebody's going to be in power. There's going to be a hierarchy, and because of that, it's better that in the international circle you have a country like the United States, which has legitimate institutions of government. That you have like actual.
Knock on wood.
Yeah, knock on wood. God bless us. Keep them going. Please have trust in
Congress,
them to some
retake
degree.
your power.
Yeah, all of these things, like it's not perfect in any way, but I think it's better than the alternative countries. And so because of that, I look at it and I compare it against alternatives.
Okay.
So I would not say the government is inherently
And
good.
not everyone on the
I
left.
do
Not
like
everyone
government.
on the left agrees.
Yeah, but that's a
not
good point,
not
though.
everyone on the left agrees that we are better than the alternative, right? Like,
Yeah, I think that's the
who's the
main
guy that we
point.
talked about on for an entire podcast who
Well,
loves China.
This is the main point of saying, like, I think that a lot of left wingers in particular, but many of my right wing friends too, will look out
They
at other
actually
countries
like
and they prefer them. This is like Tucker
authoritarianism.
Carlson's whole bit is he looks out at Russia and he's like,
like it.
they're socially conservative.
Yeah.
Well, I'm pretty sure he literally said, I think we're invading Venezuela because we want because
global
of gay marriage.
Yeah.
Because we want to make sure that they legalize gay marriage.
I'm not right wing
I'm like,
enough for this.
That's literally what Tucker
global
Carlson
homo.
said.
Global homo. You haven't
This
heard
is
of that?
it's I know it's crazy. It's crazy talk, but like he was arguing that that's the reason
They're
we
like,
stepped in
he's-
Venezuela.
Yeah.
How though? I can't even make that connection.
Was to
Because-
legalize gay marriage,
yeah,
to
because
make
it's
sure that
illegal.
people can do these. And this is what I'm
It's
saying: is that
illegal
if
in
you
Venezuela.
think that the U.S. is a force for bad in the world, if you think that our goals are averse to your own personal ones, then you're not going to like our intervention. You're also not going to like us having predominance.
Whether you're on the right or the left.
Or on the left.
Yeah.
But I think this also it also comes to the fact of like self-determination of countries around the world. Like when it comes to, like you said, how some people may think that authoritarian regimes are like the way to go.
Sure. Russia's a pretty good example of that.
Yeah.
They've always had an authoritarian regime.
But in my opinion, I'm like, if the people want, I mean, they can't vote for it. But like, who are we to say that this other government can't operate in the way that they want to as long as people aren't getting hurt? Is the thing.
People are getting hurt, right? All
Yeah.
the time. People are getting hurt here, everywhere. They get hurt everywhere in
Yeah.
every system.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So like I feel like under democracy too, people are getting hurt. Under capitalism, people are getting hurt. And so I think that sometimes there's just like a bit of a double standard where it's like our way of going about this is so much better. We're going to invade you because you are authoritarian, because you are a socialist. And I almost think that it's like not fair to blame it on especially the economic system. I think blaming it on authoritarianism, dictatorship is a lot more of a reasonable response, but I don't think it's socialism inherently that's causing a lot of the abuses that we see in some of
It's
these.
either or.
I mean,
It's either or for us. I would argue that like a strong man or individuals who are
Is
corrupt,
inevitable
they
in
want power
socialism.
and they're going to use either the socialist far left or they're going to go national socialist far
Fascist
right,
far right,
and they're just
yeah.
going to accrue as much power as possible and
Yeah.
then tell you how to live your life and then also take a ton off the top for themselves. And that's exactly what happened in Venezuela. And so like
And I mean, I would just say, would you say that what's happening in China to the Uyghurs or what's happening in Iran to anybody, women, gays, anybody, like, or Venezuela, is that worse than what's happening here? Is
Yeah,
that's
no, of
like
course
there
that's
are
worse.
like worse things that are happening in other countries that have these totalitarian regimes, whether they're religious Islamic or socialist atheist, like they're worse. And I think we have to be able to say, like, while we're trending towards maybe totalitarianism in some sense, like we have the building blocks to resist that, and I hope that we do. Other countries don't have that. And so, like, yes, our system is flawed, but it is, I can say morally, like, it is better than the rest, some other countries.
Yeah, and I also do want to clarify this, though. Like, a lot of the reason why I criticize the U.S. and criticize, like, this country so much, this is a James Baldwin quote, but I criticize my country so much because I love it. Because I see my potential in the country. That's the same thing with the Democratic Party. I criticize my own party so much because how are we going to be better as a party, as a country, unless we take a look in the mirror, do some self-reflection, and see maybe that wasn't the best thing to do. And so sometimes it can come across like a lot of leftists as just like being American hating, but I see myself as one of the biggest lovers of this country, the biggest lovers of democracy, and it's just I believe, like, I hold our country to such a standard that when I do see it doing the wrong thing, whether that be through international law or just abusive or just morally wrong to me, I call it out, not because I hate it, but because I love it.
And thank God that we can do that here.
Beautiful. I think we fully agree on that in terms of like loving our country, and that's what brings us to, and loving other people too.
Yeah.
Loving God, loving other people. Those are the things that drive us to this discussion. That's a long form discussion. Oh my gosh.
Much longer.
It could be much longer.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for that. I think we'll move to the next segment.
Next week on Approach the Bench.
So who do you guys think will be the Democrat nominee then in 2028?
I mean, who hated Zoran more than the Democratic Party? It was
Me.
the party.
What you're describing is my like literal nightmare. I'll be honest with you.
I'm going to be really conservative here for a moment. I don't think this country is ready for a woman president.
I feel like liberal guys often make the girls pay. Is that true?
That is true. I've had men ask to pay me to blue pill them.
Wow.
I can't say I denied it. I did make a few, maybe hundreds, thousands from that, but...
Oh my gosh! That was so mean, bro.
Haters! I have like people who may come after me.